The classified briefing on drones, what the government claimed behind closed doors, plus Donald Trump's main man in the House. Some Republicans now mad about Mike Johnson, and no punting. Why the National Football League is in the middle of the latest spending fight. That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
Can I ask you quickly about the drone situation? Are you satisfied?
More than what you've seen in the media.
So are you satisfied with the response from DOD and from Homeland Security last night?
I think we all wish we knew more.
The top Republican on the Senate Intelligence Committee, the next likely Secretary of State, saying today when it comes to the drones above us, he's not any different than you or me. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. In the House of Representatives today, members of the Intelligence Committee receiving a briefing about those mysterious drone sightings in our skies. As the Pentagon says, they are not paid for with your tax dollars and are not a U.S. testing program.
Are all of these either civilian or otherwise, but just not Department of Defense drones?
You're talking about the drones in New Jersey up and down the... Yes, they are not DOD assets.
None of them are?
To my knowledge, none of them are.
Congressman Darren LaHood received that classified briefing and joins us here on the Hill in a moment. But we begin tonight with our Kelly Meyer, who was pressing the Pentagon today for answers. Hello, Kelly. You were at that briefing.
Yeah.
It was like every other one was about drones, and you could say at this point, rightfully so. What'd they tell you?
Yeah, and I mean, this was the first time we heard in a briefing, really, from administration officials since the White House came out last night and said that these are hobby drones, law enforcement drones, helicopters, planes, and some stars. And he said he wasn't trying to downplay it, but he did say that there are a lot of drones in the sky, and they obviously aren't monitoring each and every one of them. But there are some that he says come near U.S. military bases. He tells us that this isn't unusual, but I talked to him and asked him about what would make it that it would be a threat. What would constitute as a threat? And I wanted to play what he had to say to me.
What would constitute it as a threat? What is the benchmark, and have you been communicating with other military installations to be ready for more of these drones, and how to spot if it could be a threat before it might be too late?
It won't surprise you. This is not a new conversation for us within DOD. I mean, as I highlighted, drones flying, whether here or overseas, is not something new, right?
Interesting, though, because if it is just a hobby drone, then why did members of Congress have to have a classified briefing on it? He said he would have to refer us to Congress for that question. He said they are working to share as much information as they can. But up on Capitol Hill today, as you were talking about, members were briefed on this. Beforehand, they had a lot of questions, Republicans and Democrats saying they don't know what they are. Afterwards, they felt as though they had a thorough response from the intelligence officials that were in that. We could play just a quick bite of what Congressman Himes had to say.
There's no evidence that anybody is acting unlawfully here, or that any of these drones, in as much as the authorities know anything about them, are associated with anybody with malign intent.
The takeaway is that they can do a better job monitoring these drones. And as Major General Ryder said to me today, this is only going to be a problem that sticks around. There's going to be a lot of drones in the sky and more to come.
All right. Kelly Meyer, see you back later in the show. Thank you very much. So at that drone classified briefing today on Capitol Hill, was the Republican congressman from the state of Illinois, Darren LaHood. He is a member of the House Intelligence Committee, along with the China Select Committee, and joins us live here on the Hill. Congressman, thanks for being with us. What did you learn, if anything? Were you satisfied at all?
Well, Blake, thanks for having me on. I can't talk about what we went over in the classified briefing, but I will say this. Obviously, over the last several weeks, we've had numerous sightings and growing public concern in New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio, many different states. And what's astonishing is the Biden administration has been wholly unprepared to provide an explanation. And I think this goes to a pattern of failure with the Biden administration. Let's remember, Blake, go back to the spy balloon that flew over the United States. And what was the argument at that time? That we should be concerned. The Biden administration said, no, we don't need to be concerned about that. This is nothing. That, in fact, was not true. We've learned that later. Other intelligence failures, for instance, what happened on October 7th to Israel. wasn't on our radar screen. The fall of Assad last weekend, nobody knew anything until it happened.
I hear you, I hear you, Congressman, and there's lots of questions about a host of different global issues, but I kind of want to hone in on, sir, what you may or may not have learned. And I get that a lot of this is classified. All of it is classified. But we heard from the Pentagon today, so let me direct you there. They said, for example, Pat Ryder over at the Pentagon, they are not DOD assets, Department of Defense assets, these drones. Do you believe that?
Well, here's what I know. This is an important piece of information. 5 days ago in California, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office indicted a Chinese citizen who was trying to leave the country, who was using a drone at Vandenberg Air Force Base and on SpaceX. That's facts, right? So there was a warrant issued. There was an investigation of a Chinese citizen with a drone flying over an Air Force base, period. So, again, I'm not going to get into a classified briefing, but when you hear stuff like that and you have that information in the public realm, and again, you have a Biden administration that has projected no sense that they have this situation under control. Where is the president? Where is Secretary Blinken? Where is Chris Wray? Where are these people out there assuring the American people?
Did this need to be classified,
in fact,
Congressman?
Well, we have laws and rules in place for classification, and we're going to abide by those. Let me just mention one other thing. I also think there is legislation that we ought to look at in Congress. The fact that vehicles that we have on land are heavily regulated. When you buy a car or a vehicle, you have to register it. If you take a left turn illegally, you're going to be charged. There is really no laws when it comes to these unmanned vehicles in the sky, unmanned aerial drones in the sky. Okay. That needs to change.
So let's pick up from that, because the Pentagon said today, this really caught my attention. The Pentagon said the following today about drones and military installations. And again, I understand you can't get into the classified information, but I want you to hear this and a question on the other side.
Is it possible that some of those are surveilling? Absolutely. But can you make that assumption in every case? Not necessarily.
So how do we deal with this? Because the answer out of the Pentagon today, Congressman, was, yeah, there might be some really bad things potentially happening over our military sites, and okay. How do we deal with this?
Well, I think we as a committee have to collectively deal with this, and we're looking at a number of different options there on how that is done. I think the new Trump administration, I know new incoming National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is looking at this, John Radcliffe, our new CIA director. There has to be a better way to deal with this. I think all options need to be on the table, and I think you'll see a much different approach when it comes to the Trump administration and a stronger, more robust explanation and being better prepared. This, frankly, should not be happening. I think we collectively understand that, and I think there'll be a different approach.
I had your colleague, Congressman Chris Smith, on the show yesterday. Here's what he told me, and I want to ask you about it real quick, if you don't mind.
They've seen it in a way that suggests formations that are coming off the ocean into the land. And even with the Coast Guard, I spoke to one of the commanders who said one of our 47-foot rescue boats, right on its stern, were between 12 and 30 drones following close proximity to that.
Talks there about a dozen drones that were following a Coast Guard boat. Was that incident addressed at all, Congressman, or anything else like it? Did intelligence officials sort of take you case by case in any of this?
Listen, I'm not going to get into specifics. I can't do that. We had a thorough briefing today. I stand by my statement earlier that I think this has been a pattern of failure by the Biden administration. It's been a PR nightmare. They should have handled this much differently, and I think there was a way to do that. But again, this goes to the pattern the Biden administration has engaged in not being fully prepared to provide explanations to the American people.
All right, we'll leave it there. Congressman Darren LaHood, member of the House Intelligence Committee, member of the China Select Committee, Republican from Illinois. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Blake.
You got it. All right, come on in. Mike Inganamort. He is a New Jersey Assemblyman. Once again, here on the Hill, who's been witnessing this stuff in the skies above him there in his home state of New Jersey. Mike, you heard from the Pentagon. You heard from a member of the House Intelligence Committee who was just briefed. We get it. They can't reveal classified information. Are you satisfied with anything that you have heard?
We haven't heard anything, so there's nothing to be satisfied with, frankly. And I don't mean to be flippant, but, this is something where, Blake, we're in week 5 of this here in New Jersey, particularly in Northwest New Jersey, the part of the state that I represent. The first phone calls I got from mayors and police departments was November 18th. And in that 4.5-5-week stretch, we have gotten no information. For the first 4.5 weeks, I would say that the federal government said nothing about it. And it's just in this past week where we're starting to hear different things from the Biden administration, from the Pentagon, from John Kirby. It was mixed messages for a while there. And today, when the Pentagon said that these are not military assets, that contradicted some of the things the president-elect said yesterday, where he felt that the military
So
did
who do you
know
believe? You believe Donald Trump or you believe Pat Ryder over at the Pentagon?
I don't know who to believe. And that's
Donald Trump, by the way, didn't say that they were military assets. He just said that the government, he believes the government knows.
Fair. And if that's the case, I think that they need to share some information with Americans and New Jerseyans in particular, because our imaginations have been running wild, which is not a responsible approach to this. I understand that. But when we have no information, no conclusive information, we've heard a lot about what these drones are not. What we have not heard is what these drones are, or where they're coming from, who is operating them, and what they are doing. And I think if the government had come out initially and said this is part of a military operation with a national security imperative, I think most New Jerseyans would give them a lot of deference in such a situation. What we heard from the Pentagon today was the opposite, and that makes us call for something different. It's time to take some of these drones down.
Okay, so that's where I was going, because you called this on the show the other day a quote-unquote invasion that is happening. And now you believe it's time. So if you do take them down and you take them down over land, what goes up must come down. And you know how that goes, Mike. That could be a big problem for your constituents.
I understand that, and I'm certainly not calling for my constituents or any, New Jersey residents to take these drones down with their own hands or other capabilities. This is something for America's military, and that could include the New Jersey Air National Guard, to take these down in a safe and secure manner, whether that's over water.
So you want the U.S. military in the skies over New Jersey taking action, shooting these down, plain English.
5.5 weeks in, yes, I do.
Okay, we'll leave them there. And you want this specifically in your state, in New Jersey?
That's where this started.
All over?
Wherever these unidentifiable drones are that the Pentagon denies having any control over or involvement with, where we truly do not who or what they are, could be a foreign adversary, could be a malicious actor here, at home on the domestic side. If we're operating in total darkness here and we don't know what they're doing and why they're here, then yes, I think these drones should be taken down in a safe and secure way. Look at them up close and understand more about what these drones are.
Mike Ganamart, who is an assemblyman there in the Garden State. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
We'll see. We don't have answers, right? Or I guess we do have answers, Mike, but we do and we don't, depending on however you look at it. Thanks for being with us here on The Hill.
Thanks a lot.
You got it. All right, still to come here on The Hill. You know how threats of a government shutdown, it's nothing new in Washington. Happens all the time. Well, here's what's different this time. Why was the National Football League involved with the conversations today? Mick Mulvaney on the other side of the break. Plus, the president calls for a ban into stock trading. Is this a dig at Nancy Pelosi? And will the House Speaker Mike Johnson be able to keep the top job in the House? Why some Republicans are now expressing angst with the Speaker. I'm Blake Berman. Welcome to Washington. This is the center of politics. You're watching The Hill on NewsNation. Back and forth.
How about listening to the sounds of Istanbul? Beautiful, isn't it? But you can't discover the coolest city in the world just by listening. Check Istanbul.goturkiye.com now and plan your Istanbul trip today.
Or the under. That Congress does anything to pass laws relating to sports betting and the varying issues that arise around it. That debate taking place in a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing today with questions about if you pass laws, who should handle it?
That there absolutely needs to be a level of federal oversight. And I would respectfully suggest that's what Senator Blumenthal's bill the Safe Bet Act does. It sets minimum federal standards.
I urge the committee to respect the successes the states have achieved in regulating in the past, and federal oversight is clearly not needed.
All right, so Congress is starting to take a deeper look at sports betting as it has exploded in the recent years. Right now, sports betting, a significant portion of it online, is legal in at least 38 states and Washington, D.C. Now, last year, sports gambling in the U.S. hit roughly $120 billion, about $35 billion expected to be wagered legally this year on just the National Football League alone. But much of Congress right now has its eyes on funds of a much different kind. Lawmakers at this very hour are still trying to get to the finish line a government funding deal. Now, that expires on Friday, and it's basically needed to keep the lights on for another few months. There's likely to be roughly, in this whole spending deal, likely to be roughly $100 billion for disaster aid, an extension of the Farm Bill, and significant help for that industry and a big change involving RFK Stadium. You heard that right, RFK Stadium. A government spending bill authored by your United States Congress, and the last-minute deal-making includes one of the franchises in the National Football League. You wonder how? Look who's here. Nick Mulvaney, former Trump White House Chief of Staff, NewsNation contributor, former Congressman, wears a half a dozen different hats or so. Hello, sir.
You're going to ask me if I'm surprised?
I think so here's the thing with this. This would transfer control of RFK Stadium, which is where the Commanders used to play. Then they went 5 miles down the road into Maryland, and now a lot of folks want them back here in D.C. I don't want to get into all that. The question here is, why is Congress in a funding deal doing anything with the National Football League?
That's a fair question. Here's the answer to that, is that there are a couple in a Congress that doesn't really function very well.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean passing bills and so forth. It's just, listen, there's a lot of tension in that building, very narrow margins. It's tough to pass anything. The attention automatically goes to what we call must-pass pieces of legislation. There's a couple bills that have to pass every single year. The National Defense Authorization Act that passed last week. That's the Pentagon.
Right.
Okay, well, it authorizes.
Authorized, right.
Okay, and this spending bill has to pass. So if you've got a pet project and you're a powerful lawmaker, you're looking for this vehicle because you can take your bill that is never, ever going to see the light of day on its own and attach it to this other bill that has to pass. And part of the art of this town is, what can you get on that must-pass piece of legislation?
So you know this very well because when you were at the White House, you were involved. Again, you were at the White House. You were the chief of staff, and you were getting involved in this. Like I could say, Mulvaney, that's a waste of time. Tell me why it's not.
That was a different issue because here in Washington D.C., which is a federal thing, right? We run the city. There's home rule, and there's a city council and mayor, and I get all that. But it's a federal place. And there's a piece of land over on the west side of town where RFK Stadium is. It's actually much bigger than the stadium. I think it's 22 acres or something like that.
Okay.
And it's underutilized. And what we want to try and do is figure out a way to revitalize it. Maybe build a new stadium, maybe build apartments, maybe do something to bring life back into that part of town.
Okay.
But we couldn't because the city had a long-term lease on it from the days when the old Redskins team, now the Commanders, were there. So we tried to negotiate with the city to give the city a piece of a Franklin Park in exchange for giving up the lease so that part of town could be redeveloped. Otherwise, it will sit empty until the city's lease is up.
And on this day in which they were trying to get all these things, look,
yes,
government fund. So to be clear, the way Congress works is you set the date at December 20th because you make sure Congress does it because nobody's going to miss their holiday vacation.
No, the hard stuff in Washington gets done on July 31st because that's right before the August recess. They leave town for 5 weeks. And right before Christmas because everybody wants to go home.
Yeah, they have their plans.
It was one of the reasons we started the Freedom Caucus was frustration over how our own leadership used the calendar against us. And it's been done in Washington for a long time.
And today, two of the last big items were the Farm Bill, very important, and can you get the Maryland senators to support the movement of the RFK Stadium?
And my guess is if we look hard, there's going to be a sweetener in there for Maryland.
Probably. Yep. Think about it all. Nick, thank you. Appreciate it. Still much more ahead. Here on the Hill is the president making a little bit of a statement here on Nancy Pelosi. Did you hear what the president had to say about banning stock trades? Why is Joe Biden talking about this now? Also, don't forget to download the NewsNation app for more on all the big stories and to watch us anytime, anywhere. The Hill's back in a few.
When you join Lesmos Plus, you unlock access to over 2,000 science-backed, endorphin-inducing workouts you'll actually enjoy. With exercises for every mood, every fitness level, and every goal, you can work out anytime, anywhere, on any device. Plus, sign up today and get 14 days free. Find the workout that's right for you. Choose happy and download the Lesmos Plus app today.
Welcome back to The Hill here on News Nation. Climbing the Hill for Senate support, and the president beats up on congressional stock trading. Our Kelly Meyer is here with what's happening in the Capitol and more. Hello, Kelly.
Hey there, Blake. Well, if you are one of Donald Trump's nominees, chances are you were up on Capitol Hill today looking for support from Senators Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Pete Hegseth, all meeting with senators who will decide their fate. Hegseth met with Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, and Fetterman posted this about his meetings with Trump nominees, saying, "My votes will come from an open mind and an informed opinion after having a conversation with them. That's not controversial. It's my job." Hegseth thanked Fetterman for his, quote, fairness, courage, and hospitality. Donald Trump didn't pull any punches in his reaction to New York Judge Juan Merchan's latest decision that Trump cannot claim presidential immunity to overturn his felony conviction. In a Truth Social post, the president-elect wrote, "Merchan, who is a radical partisan, wrote an opinion that is knowingly unlawful, goes against our Constitution, and, if allowed to stand, would be the end of the presidency as we know it." And President Biden is calling for a ban on members of Congress trading stocks. That's wading into a debate that has gone on for years with just a month left in his term. The interview was done with the political advisor to Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
I think we should be changing the law that we have to, but we abide by at the federal level, that nobody in the Congress should be able to make money in the stock market while they're in the Congress.
And that's what's happening on the Hill, Blake.
I don't know. What do you think about the timing here? He's out the door. He's got 5 weeks left or something like that. And now all of a sudden, he's like, you know what? The whole Congress trading stocks things. And by the way, as he talks about, it wasn't something that he was actively engaged in when he was in the Senate. He's now like, yeah, we not a good idea.
Yeah, I think he's got some surprises up his sleeve before he heads out in a month from now. So I'm going to keep watching that White House.
This is one of those things, though, that I think if you ask the average American, they would be like, huh?
Right.
They have access to the information. We just talked to a sitting member of Congress who was like, I can't tell you because it's a classified briefing. Yeah. Right? And you got members of Congress trading stocks. It doesn't really sit well with a lot of people.
Yeah, and I remember covering John Ossoff up on Capitol Hill from Georgia, and he's been doing this, working on a bill on this for quite a while.
Pounding the table on this. He's doing it with both sides, Democrats and Republicans.
So they're trying to work together on this, so maybe you'll gain some traction after this. We'll see.
Kelly in the Capitol.
All right.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. So one of those members of Congress who has been pushing for a ban is the Republican from the state of Tennessee. He is Congressman Tim Burchett, once again back here on the Hill. Congressman, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. So lawmakers and the stock market, okay? So Unusual Whales, you probably know the handle on X. They follow this thing inside and out. 32 lawmakers beat the S&P 500 in 2023. 18 lawmakers had gains of 50% or more in 2023. By the way, this is evenly split among Democrats and Republicans. So this idea that I believe you've signed up for, or a version of it, is the Ethics Act. Prohibits stock trading immediately for lawmakers. Lawmakers must fully divest by 2027. Staffers are allowed to trade. What's going on? What do you witness up there, Congressman?
Well, I think all you got to look at is when we sent our missile defense system to Ukraine, you had members of both parties in that committee that miraculously owned stock in the missile defense company that we had to renew restock our missiles with in a no-bid multi-billion-dollar contract. You just go down the line. I mean, everybody wants to rail on Nancy Pelosi. I mean, that's bad enough, but you got folks on both sides of the aisle that are playing that game, and it's just it's unfortunate. You know, everybody ought to do like I do and just call my buddy Tommy Seiler up in Knoxville and let him manage he's managed my $9,000 portfolio in a mutual fund. I think it's up to $11,000 in 6 years, so I'm doing pretty good.
I'm not laughing at the size. I'm laughing at the name check.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all right. But it's the truth. I mean, you know, look, look at those guys making all that money. You're in on a meeting, you know something's about to happen before it happens, and then it does. It's just pathetic. And everybody knows it's going on, but it's legal. It's legal for us to do it because we don't have the guts to change the law.
Do you think there's illegal activity happening?
No, because technically it's legal. When I was mayor of Knox County back in the day, I would call my lawyer in and my good buddy Colonel Julian, who since passed away, and a lawyer would say, well, it's legal, Mayor. And I'd say, Colonel, is it ethical? And he'd say, I don't think so, Mayor. And we wouldn't do it. And just because it's legal doesn't mean it's ethical, and it's clearly not ethical what we're doing. This is ridiculous. We're defying all odds. I think, I have a bill in myself to limit it, that you have to report it within 15 days. And then everybody else can just share in the largesse of our crooked nature.
Let me redirect you here real quick, Congressman, because you've been on the forefront with UAPs, and obviously there's story after story now in the conversation with drones. Yeah. Where are you on drones right now? What do you think this is, Congressman Burchett?
I think it's a combination of things. I think you've got good old boys and girls up there with their drones. I think you've got some military stuff. You've got some others. You've got some misidentified things, obviously. But the reality is that it is a test. The Chinese are conducting it, whether they're responsible directly or not. They're watching our direction, just like with the hot air balloon that they flew over our country.
What do you mean responsible directly or not?
Our nation. Well, they're keeping an eye on it. They have componentry that's in these drones. They're watching our response. They're watching our military response, which is terrible, our political response, which is gutless, and then our press response, and to see how America reacts. So what I'm afraid of is that, you cry wolf so many times, we stop paying attention to it, and then we have a tragedy that occurs with one of these things. Either it goes up, it gets sucked into a jet engine, or some nefarious group, maybe the Chinese, launches some off our coast. They have dirty bombs in them. They are using biological entities or some other thing, and we don't pay attention to them because we think, oh, that's nothing anymore. The government has said it's nothing. And look, you could drop a penny on any baseball diamond in the country, and if it's heads up, there's a satellite that can probably tell you the date on that penny. And we're telling America that we don't know where these things are coming from or where they're landing. It can be in the air for 30 minutes to an hour. It's pretty easy to figure out. You ought to be able to figure out where they're coming from. We ought to be able to trace them. And, our FBI and all the others are just with their head in the sand. It's got to change.
You think the government is lying? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you think they're lying on this issue, Congressman?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when have they ever told us the truth on anything? I mean, come on. And this thing has been going on, and I don't think they have control of it, and they don't know what to do, so they're just going to lie. And they're going to get out because the Biden administration is going to be out of office here soon. And Trump said, look, we'll shoot them down.
Think he
I've told people
it?
in Tennessee, I think they taste like chicken. Do what?
You think Trump solves this?
I think he'll go a long way in solving it. He's not going to put up with any nonsense, I'll tell you that, because he's tired of it.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Congressman Tim Burchett, Republican from Tennessee. Always nice to speak with you, sir. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill.
Merry Christmas, brother.
You too as well. Thank you, sir. All right. Reaction now. NewsNation political contributor Scott Bolden, former chairman of the D.C. Democratic Party. Strategist Lori Watkins, former policy advisor to President Obama. Hello to you both. Thanks for being in. I actually want to talk to you about stock trading because Joe Biden came out today. You heard the congressman there name check Nancy Pelosi, right? There is a cult following on social media of Nancy Pelosi and her stock trades. 130. This is according to Unusual Whales and Quiver Quantitative. 137 million in trades over the last decade. Bought 13 million in stock in 2024. 65% gain in 2023. And I don't know. I'm just sitting there seeing President Biden, Lori, come out today and say, you know what? Ban the thing. And if that were to happen, that would impact Nancy Pelosi. And he certainly has a bone to pick with her, does he not?
Is that a conspiracy theory?
No, I'm just wondering if that's maybe with Joe Biden out the door.
Interesting timing.
Yeah, interesting timing.
So, do you all remember the Stock Act that was passed and signed by President Obama back in 2012? That put into law the policy that members of Congress shouldn't do this in the House and Senate. What was missing from that, which was the most crucial part, was there was no teeth to it. There was no consequences to any members who did inside trade or who did receive information from some of these classified or closed-door briefings and then be able to profit off of it. And since you brought up Nancy Pelosi, I'm going to counterbalance with Kelly Loeffler. Do you remember in 2020?
Both sides all over the place.
$20 million that she dumped 3 months into the job that absolutely, destroyed the voters' confidence in the state of Georgia and kind of reinvigorated this debate, right, about how much money. And her husband also owned a company that was owned by the New York Stock Exchange, for God's sake.
All over the place on both sides. This is well documented. And I just wonder why, Scott, the timing now for Joe Biden.
It's his swan song. I mean, it's not enforceable. He's going to be gone in probably 30 plus days or 45 days. And so he's getting some stuff off his chest, if you will. But it's not enforceable. He won't be the president. And is he sticking it to Mayor Pelosi? Maybe a little bit, but he wouldn't really be sticking it to her unless he could do something about it and made it a centerpiece of his legislative priority in 2025. Oh, he won't be here in 2025.
Hey, I'm just pleased that Republicans and Democrats seem to be united on this issue because it should not be a partisan issue.
Yeah, this is not partisan. The question is, can it get done? It's nice to talk about it, but the question is, will they be able to get to the finish line? Both of you two coming back, other side of the break. Frustration growing with the House Republican leader, Mike Johnson. And now there are concerns about what some Republicans might think about him and what his status can be in the new year. Plus, are Americans losing even more trust in our government over the drones? Full panel, other side.
NewsNation tonight. Our exclusive UFO investigation continues amid unexplained sightings. Brian Enton and a team of experts track down more witnesses. Has this been going on for decades? Banfield tonight, 10/9 Central.
This episode is brought to you by Vuori. Give the active people in your life something they'll truly appreciate. Performance apparel from Vuori. Whether they're into running, surfing, hiking, or even just casual walks around the block, there's something for everyone. And if you're not sure what to gift them, you can't go wrong with something from Vuori's Dream Knit collection. It's the perfect gift and so comfortable. Get 20% off your first purchase today at Vuori. VUORI.com/Spotify.
Welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation. More briefings today up on Capitol Hill, including a classified briefing with the House Intelligence Committee after the continued drone sightings across the country.
Yeah, we want answers. The response that I'm getting is that we don't know whose drones these are.
Can I ask you quickly about the drone situation? Are you satisfied?
More than what you've seen in the media.
Why aren't these things being intercepted, at least identified?
As the opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal notes today, quote, drones and the cost of lost trust. Conspiracy theories fly and public anger builds when Americans don't believe their government. Full panel here with me now, Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in the Trump administration, NewsNation contributor. Scott Bolden, NewsNation contributor as well. Lori Watkins is a Democratic strategist. And T.W. Origi, former communications aide to Mike Pompeo. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here all together. Drones are your space. You've been on this for 10 years. Tell me.
Since 2013. So I can tell you since that time, since that time, the amount of commercial, even hobbyist drones that are up in the air has increased by almost 100%, right? People are going to be receiving these for Christmas. Right. People are going to be using these and they're going to see more of them. What the problem, I think, was, and you're going to be surprised by this, the Biden administration definitely messed up on this. They should have been front and center and come out to let the public know what was going on. These concerns you've been talking about this on your show for weeks, right? Silence from the White House, silence from the Pentagon. You have all of these law enforcement agencies, mayors, governors across all these states now who have now brought it to the attention. And so let's talk about the number. Yeah. If you are operating any UAV that is 0.5 pounds or heavier, that is supposed to be registered under the Part 107 of the FAA, then it is registered with the FAA. The government knows who those people are. If you're flying at night, you are supposed to be a registered drone pilot to be able to operate that at night and have the required lighting. That's why people are seeing these lights. They are operating, in my opinion, most of those are operating correctly. They're under 400 feet. They are within line of sight. Where the problem is that you have some of these, drone operators, the ignorance that comes into place when they end up over a restricted airspace like a military base or a government building, etc. And then people start to freak out. Do I think that we should be shooting down UAVs or drones in this country? Absolutely not. What I think the solution should be, and I think that members of Congress are ripe to do this right now, is that they need to develop rules and standards for our national airspace. Think of it as I-95 or the Turnpike. Right now, there's no rules and regulations for that, Blake, and that's what's going on.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, but that doesn't get us to the end zone, though. I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Here's the deal. You have all of these that have seemingly popped up over a short period of time. They are far larger than the Joe Schmo drones you can buy on the street. They are flying over people's homes. We have the Pentagon saying that some of them are law enforcement drones. Well, why? Because now you talked about conspiracy theories. You talk about other theories that are coming out on the internet. People talking about missing radioactive material, missing nuclear weapons that have made their way into the United States. And that's echoed by public officials in the area. And the government is saying nothing? Unacceptable.
Do you know that law enforcement uses it to spot fires? That they use it
there's
for
all
detection under bridges? I mean, law enforcement uses it all the time, and they shouldn't have to tell the American public what's going on.
There are enough regulations in place to identify who these drone users are, where they're flying, and where's the enforceability. Maybe you don't shoot them down. In my neighborhood, we shoot them down. But listen, we're not in my neighborhood, so the regulators need to come in and figure out how they're going to regulate this. And then why is the White House just not talking about it? It makes no sense.
You just hit on something that Democrats and Republicans share that people don't realize. In your neighborhood, they shoot them down. In my neighborhood, they shoot them down because I live in the middle of nowhere in South Carolina. So there is that commonality.
I lived in Joliet, Illinois.
That's exactly right.
Frustration among House Republicans with the House Speaker Mike Johnson starting to build a little bit here. Some threaten rebellion against him if aid to farmers was not added to a bill to fund the government. And the Congressman Eric Burleson, Republican, calling the situation concerning funding the government, quote, a dumpster fire. Mick, here's what catches my attention on this is the narrow majority. This is the honeymoon euphoria period. And then January comes, reality's going to set. You got to govern, and we just got a little piece of it now.
I'm trying to do the math in my head, which is always dangerous, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to vote on this CR, and they're going to leave.
Short-term funding bill.
Okay, they'll leave, and the next vote Republicans take is for Speaker. So there's going to be some tension. There's no question about it. Everybody knew this was going to be a challenge. It's always a challenge. It's even more so of a challenge when the margins are going to be as narrow as they are. Mike Johnson has to handle this properly, or else it will be inevitable that someone will step up and say they can't support him for Speaker.
Inevitable honeymoon phase? Is it honeymoon phase now and inevitable, as Mick says, that this is coming?
Well, I'm sure he's going to get some sort of loudmouth challenge, but so long as he still has the backing of President Trump, so long as he still has the backing of President Trump, he will be fine. And once January rolls in and everyone gets all high on the fact that we just inaugurated a new president and a new Congress, people will shut up and we'll worry about this again later. And by the way, the Freedom Caucus is more or less on board with this, with Mike Johnson on this. Not everybody, but more or less are.
It looks like they'll bring it to the floor, though, under suspension of the rules.
Yes.
It really does tend to upset people.
Right.
Translation
CRs are a dangerous
It's ugly and messy.
Yeah.
CRs
but is he in trouble? That's all that matters. Is he going to survive?
Yes.
Or is he going to get a serious challenge? And what happens when Trump disagrees with him? I mean, this is what the next 4 years is going to be like with him.
Let's wait and see on that,
Meantime, by the way, with all the talk of drones and what's up in the sky, did you know that our guy TW is like the history buff of all history buffs?
Oh, you give me too much credit.
No, I do. What's your Instagram handle? Because you do it there.
At TW Arigi.
All right, time for a bit of trivia with TW. While all eyes are on the skies, thanks to the series of mysterious drone sightings, TW is here with a notable aviation anniversary.
Yes.
What is it?
121 years ago today, Wilbur and Orville Wright conducted their first successful sustained flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It lasted 12 seconds and traveled 120 feet, reaching speeds of almost 7 miles an hour. Speedy. There were three.
How many years ago?
4 of them that day. 121.
Wow.
1903, December 17th.
Go aviation.
And now we got jets.
There you go.
Now we got jets.
And now we're talking about
And
drones.
spaceships.
Look at how far.
66 years later, we were on the moon. How crazy that is.
That's what's fascinating is by the time you go from that to being on the moon, and then you do the math of where we are, you start to
Two
think
men without a high school degree.
Yeah, you start to think about the realm of possibilities.
Drone delivery of medicine. I mean, come on. This is amazing.
Thank y'all.
I learned a lot about drones. I did. We should listen to Lori on that more often.
Yeah,
thanks.
really. Appreciate you. Still to come here on the Hill. The California governor, Gavin Newsom, unveils his plan to make it easier to have a college degree, or have a career rather, without a college degree. Think about what the governor's laying out there. Basically saying, you know what, if you don't have a college degree, no problem. Here's why and here's how. Leland Vittert, other side of the break.
I was running until I wasn't. My hospital stay would have cost nearly $48,000, even with insurance. But with VA, I'll pay zero. And VA is the best, most affordable healthcare in America for veterans like me. Knowing that my family is waiting at home and a surprise medical bill isn't, that's good for my heart. My service was then, my benefits are now. Get what you earned. Visit choose.va.gov.
Not all veterans are eligible for the type or amount of benefits mentioned here.
Many people in this country, a college degree is a foundation for potentially a high-paying career. But do you really need that diploma? In California, the governor there, Gavin Newsom, hopes that for more Californians, the answer could be no. The governor releasing a framework to help people build high-paying careers, whether they have a degree, a four-year degree, or not. The framework includes digital career passports, as they're being called, that show a worker's skills and qualifications to employers, a statewide collaborative to coordinate between education systems and employers, increasing work-based learning opportunities, and wider access to workforce training and education. Now, there are financial benefits to having a college degree, so let's look at that for a second. For example, in 2022, median earnings, the average earnings for people ages 25 to 34 with a bachelor's degree, you can see it here, $66,000, but a high school diploma was about $42,000, 59% higher. Now, median earnings for that group were $41,800, according to the National Center for Education Statistics. But diplomas come also with price tags. In all, right now, Americans owe about $1.6 trillion all across this country in student loans. About 42%, think about this, 42% who have loans owe more right now than they did a decade ago. So what about this question? Is a degree worth it? Well, only 22% of U.S. adults believe it's worth it if you have to take out loans. 47%, so basically half, say a degree is worth it, but only without the debt. That's that, basically, you can see there, half the pie. Nearly 30% say it is not worth it at all. Joining me now is Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. It's
you need a statistics degree
to go through that?
To figure out all that.
How about this number? Because I looked it up. Where you and
we got more numbers now?
Where you and I went to college. You went to Northwestern. 68,000 for tuition and fees. University of Michigan, where I went, 63,000. And this is the conversation.
And this is what we ended up as?
How did we get here? No. But this is the conversation a lot of parents have and a lot of families have, which is like, I'm going to pay that, I'm going to have this, and what about if I don't go that route and I could still have a wonderful, great, successful career?
Not only that, but we are seeing now that the imprimatur of a college degree doesn't mean as much. There's a lot of very big companies now that used to say, oh, you need a four-year degree, oh, you got to be educated at the Ivies, saying, no, you don't anymore. And an Ivy League education, for some, is now being almost seen as a scarlet letter. Versus, hey, I went to a big state school where I had more life experience.
It's at least the conversation with families of, do I want to go down that path? Is it worth it?
The whole issue, right, is every parent wants their kid to have a better life than they did.
Right.
That how to deliver that and how to make everyone feel as though that's possible.
But if you want to go to that state school where tuition is a lot cheaper, kids, you can do that. Trust me, it's the conversation. You got Senator Ted Cruz coming up on the show.
Senator Ted Cruz coming up, not on this issue, but on other pertinent issues of the day.
What are you talking to him about?
Republicans' ability to screw things up.